Tribe, I become invincible with my 10,000 times bonus from the start. Chapter 211, Do you understand the meaning of war? However, even so, they were still not panicking. The troops in front of them were only cavalrymen, and it was well known that their ability to attack the city was still very low. They would not just send their horses crashing into the city walls, right? A tall and sturdy old general with white hair said loudly, "Everyone, don't worry. Our city walls are of mythical grade. This is the powerful legacy left behind by our late king. Even when we fought against the Zergs back then, our city walls have never been broken through." His sonorous and confident voice rang in the ears of every general. Hearing this, everyone instantly felt at ease. Ha ha ha, the old general's right. Although they have a lot of troops, we have mythical grade city walls that can't break through at all. The phantom goddess only knows some low-level tricks. In a real war, her ability's useless. We just need to look down from above and weaken them gradually. The reinforcements from the surrounding cities should arrive soon. At that time, the ones who'll be in trouble will be them. Suddenly, a huge icy blue dragon that was dozens of meters long swooped down from the clouds. The body of this huge dragon was slender and graceful. On its head, there was a faint shape of a crown. It was Sylvia. Li Cheng naturally rode on her head. Looking at the formation below, he sneered and tossed countless spherical objects down at them. Under everyone's gaze, the countless spheres fell from the sky. Watching this scene, the eyelids of countless generals twitched as they hurriedly cast their scouting spells to look at the attributes of these small balls. When they saw the attributes, they were all shocked. Li Cheng was throwing mythical-grade bombs at them. Everyone was dumbfounded. Those bombs did not seem like ordinary mythical-grade bombs. In Tribe, the city walls were special buildings. Typically, equipment of the same level would not cause much damage to city walls. Even if a mythical bomb was dropped onto a mythical city wall, it would not cause much damage. However, that was relative. Li Cheng was not only throwing a few bombs at them. Instead, he used sacks of bombs as a unit of calculation. Looking at the number, it was at least tens of thousands of mythical bombs. With so many bombs exploding in one go, one could imagine the consequences. All the generals had the same thought, that they could not afford to play with the man in front of them who could easily obtain tens of thousands of mythical bombs. They really wanted to yell at Li Cheng loudly, "Do you understand the meaning of war?" The generals were all panicking and jumping in fear. F***ck. Is that a F***ing mythical bomb? F***ck, a mythical bomb can be sold for billions of gold coins each. Do you think this is a sesame seed? Doesn't it cost money? Hurry up and stop him. If there are too many mythical bombs, our city walls will be blown into pieces. What about the flying forces? Charge! Long-range forces! Focus fire on them and take down as many as you can. The generals were all trembling with fear. The number of mythical bombs they had was incredibly few, to begin with, and only a few mythical-grade masters could make them. Still, they were not so rare that they could not be bought. However, they had never seen someone play with them like Li Cheng did, playing with tens of thousands of bombs in one go. They were even wondering if the materials from the entire continent could even be enough to make these tens of thousands of bombs. At this moment, Li Cheng was not thinking too much. He casually threw 30,000 bombs down on them. In any case, he had obtained 100,000 bombs in one go, so he did not feel any heartache by spending 30,000 bombs. Not long after, the scene was filled with violent explosions. Boom! 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 The sky-shaking explosions resounded through the sky. Mushroom clouds bloomed as an extremely violent explosion came from below. At this moment, the system notification sound was ringing constantly in Li Cheng's ears. Ding! Dong! You've used the mythical grade special bomb and triggered a 10,000 times increase. The explosive power of the bomb has increased by 10,000 times. Ding, dong. Ding, dong. You've successfully destroyed the mythical grade wall of 9 gods. Ding, dong. You've killed mythical grade General Fred and obtained experience points. You've also triggered a 10,000 times amplification. Ding, dong. You've killed legendary grade General Kurade and obtained experience points. You've also triggered a 10,000 times amplification. At this moment, Sylvia's slender body burst forth from the smoke of the explosions, accompanied by her angry voice, "Are you trying to blow me up again? My heart aches for you. How could I ever blow you up?" Li Cheng said, smiling at this hot-tempered dragon princess. Humph! Sylvia's soft snort came without saying anything. It was evident that this proud dragon princess was quite satisfied with Li Cheng's answer. Li Cheng also revealed a smile as he recalled what had happened before. When he was in the Shadow World, he had used the star cannon and triggered the 10,000 times amplification system. Because of that, he had blown Sylvia to bits. Fortunately, he had the goddess of life's Sai, so he could revive Sylvia. At that time, the relationship between the two of them was not that good. After spending some time getting along, their relationship had developed quite well. This arrogant frost dragon princess's face of disgust for Li Cheng was no longer the same as before. At least, Li Cheng had never disappointed Sylvia. The past events could be considered a special memory between the two of them. Thinking of the past, Li Cheng could not help but laugh. He shook his head and retracted his thoughts. At this time, the smoke from the explosion had already dispersed. Looking at the scene below him, Li Cheng's pupils constricted. Because it was just too tragic. Although the special bombs were trash when used on soldiers that were not the Zergs, they were still mythical grade bombs. Moreover, it had triggered the 10,000 times amplification system. This wave of explosions created a deep pit in the ground with a radius of more than 1,000 meters. All that was in addition to destroying the city wall. Fortunately, the troops of the Shadow World were far away enough that the shockwave from the explosion did not affect them. Otherwise, even if they were max-level units, they would have been blown to death as well. As for the troops guarding the city walls, they were naturally blown to ashes. Li Cheng briefly checked the kill list and found that many elites had been blown to death. Among them, there were a few who were mythical grade and many who were legendary grade. Suddenly, Li Cheng exclaimed softly in surprise as he saw something special. In his kill list was the mythical grade Zerg full crypt centipede. Chapter 212, Charge into the Kent Palace. When he saw that, Li Cheng revealed a cold smile. It was as he had guessed. The war that was happening in the Kingdom of Kent was a huge event that everyone in the Divine Dragon Alliance had participated in during his previous life. It had lasted for more than half a year. As an empire within the Divine Dragon Alliance, it was natural that things were not that simple. The situation was complicated and Li Cheng had hidden something from old King Hindley. The first prince had actually colluded with the Zerg. However, it was not the first prince who controlled everything behind the scenes, but the Zergs, who had placed bets on both sides. In the end, if it was not for the intervention of the players and the gods from the Kind camp, the Zergs might have completely occupied the Kingdom of Kent. The Zergs, like the demon race, were foreign species that invaded the main plane. Back then, to resist the invasion of the Zergs, all the intelligent races, humans, dwarves, elves, star spirits, and so forth, had given up their internal strifes and were unprecedentedly united to defeat the Zergs. Of course, whether or not this operation would trigger world events, Li Cheng did not care about that at all. Right now, he only wanted to kill the first prince and take control of the entire Kingdom of Kent. As for those bugs, Li Cheng did not care about them at all. With his current increase in offense and defense, even if the Zerg's immortal matriarch came, Li Cheng was confident that he could scatter their ashes. With 30,000 mythical grade bombs, the elite troops guarding the city wall could not be any more dead. Li Cheng waved his hand and 3 trillion troops ignored the huge crowd of soldiers in Hindley City as they charged past them. Li Cheng then commanded the Dragon Army to start attacking the defense facilities. As for the buildings, he used the freezing ability of his Dragon Army, instantly silencing them. The system notifications kept ringing in Li Cheng's ears. Ding, dong. The thunderstorm tower has lost its effect. Ding, dong. The brilliant tower has lost its effect. Ding, dong. Soon, countless defense towers were frozen beneath a thick layer of ice, and they all lost their effect. At this time, Li Cheng directly a speed scroll and led his elite troops to the most magnificent building in the entire city. The Kingdom of Kent was actually built on the ruins of the profound empire. Others might not have known what was hidden underneath these ruins, but Li Cheng did. There were countless Zerg armies there. As mentioned before, there were no civilians in tribe. The residents in Hindley City were all combat units. Countless heads started to appear in Hindley City. There were hundreds of billions of heads, and most of them were trash. Looking at these heads, Li Cheng frowned slightly. Although he could clear monsters very quickly, it would be a waste of time if he attacked. Thinking of this, Li Cheng gave Lillian a look. Lillian immediately nodded and immediately, dark green energy was instantly released. The system notification rang in Li Cheng's ears again. Ding, dong. Your hero, Shadow Princess Lillian, has successfully activated the Plague Enchantment card. Ding, dong. Your hero, Shadow Princess Lillian, has successfully killed 6,800,000 level 11 Kingdom of Kent's Imperial Guards. Ding, dong. Your hero, Shadow Princess Lillian, has successfully killed 5,650,000 level 12 Kingdom of Kent's Imperial Mages. Ding, dong. Li Cheng was shocked as he listened to the notifications ringing in his ear. Lillian had activated the Plague Enchantment card that she had obtained previously. The Plague Enchantment card could cause terrifying AoE damage to the surrounding troops every second. In just 1 second, Lillian had killed more than 60 million troops. This number was really too terrifying. When the Kingdom of Kent commanders, who had rushed over, witnessed this scene, their eyelids twitched. They could not find the words to describe it. This was a walking human-shaped AoE. How could they play with this? They hurriedly stopped their infantry and cavalrymen from advancing and commanded the long-range troops to attack. Seeing this, Li Cheng silently gave Lillian a thumbs up. After the Plague Enchantment card was activated, no troops would dare to block certain areas. Hence, Li Cheng's marching speed was completely unimpeded. 20 minutes later, Li Cheng's troops broke through the obstruction from the palace troops and charged into the palace. The Kent Palace was very solemn. The flames of war had already spread. On the magnificent throne was a man with a gloomy face who was staring at Li Cheng. Seeing this man, Li Cheng could guess at his identity, but he still cast a scouting spell nevertheless. Buzz Payne, Diamond. Description: the first prince of the Kingdom of Kent. He has a soft personality and is good at scheming. Being a diamond grade being, Li Cheng was too lazy to check his specific attributes. Currently, the first prince's expression was as dark as iron. He looked at Li Cheng and shouted angrily, "Netherworld, do you know what your actions mean? I advise you to surrender immediately. Otherwise, the various temples will not let you off. Your actions have completely angered the God of Fury." Hearing the God of Fury being mentioned by the first prince, Li Cheng almost laughed out loud. He was not even afraid of the Goddess of Darkness, so how could he be afraid of the mere God of Fury? Li Cheng laughed disdainfully and said coldly, "Stop pretending, what God of Fury? I know this confidence isn't yours, so call out your bug troops." Hearing Li Cheng's words, the first prince's pupils suddenly shrank and a huge wave of panic rose in his heart. How did he know? The Zerg clan was the top secret among all of his secrets. Even his own confidants and family members did not know about it. At that moment, his eyes were a little flustered. If others knew that he was colluding with the Zergs, the consequences would be obvious. Li Cheng simply yawned in boredom. He was not interested in what the first prince was thinking. As a player who had been reborn, he already knew the plot. During the Kingdom of Kent's civil war, the first prince had colluded with the Zergs and the goddess of poison behind everyone's backs. Unbeknownst to them, the second prince had also secretly contacted the Zergs. The Zergs simply wanted to cause internal strife between the brothers and destroy the entire Kingdom of Kent. As for Ella's follower, Princess Lena was the weakest among the three contenders for the throne. Soon, she would be poisoned to death by the first prince with a cup of poisoned wine. As a result, the entire Phantom Church would collapse and Ella's followers would all be wiped out. The information he knew was part of Li Cheng's plan. Once the prince's betrayals were made public, the Church of Light would definitely launch a new holy war. Chapter 213, A Girl Tens of Thousands of Years Old. If the Zergs were allowed to rise again, it would be a great disaster for the entire main plane. At this time, the first prince's biggest secret had been exposed by Li Cheng. Hence, his expression was extremely gloomy. "Kid, since you're courting death, I'll grant you your wish." As soon as the first prince finished speaking, a rumbling sound was heard in the next moment and the ground of the palace suddenly cracked open. Countless huge bugs that were several meters thick and more than 10 meters long emerged from the ground. Li Cheng narrowed his eyes and sized up the bugs in front of him. Then, he cast a scouting spell on all of them. 16x 16-legged Zerg Centipede, mythical. 27x 18-legged Zerg Elders, mythical. When Li Cheng saw the attributes of these bugs, he was a little confused. Where did this first prince get the confidence to kill him? Just based on these dozens of mythical grade Zergs? Then, a vast and terrifying aura with a destructive nature suddenly descended and the first prince's body was instantly enveloped by a terrifying energy. Looking at this, Li Cheng cast another detection spell. God of Fury, God's Descent. Description: the appearance of the God of Fury in the main plane after his descent. Grade: Mythical, Tier 7. Level: HP. Defense. Attack. Skills. Li Cheng narrowed his eyes. He never thought that the God of Fury would actually use God's Descent. Could the God of Fury also be related to the Zergs? Logically speaking, the Zergs were enemies with all the creatures in the mortal plane, including the evil forces. Now, however, it seemed that the God of Fury and these Zergs were getting along very well. At this time, the God of Fury looked at Li Cheng proudly. "Tisk, tisk, tisk kid, I didn't expect you to be so stupid as to send yourself to death's door. The last time, many kind gods were protecting you, so you had the strength to fight against us. But now, you've attacked the Kingdom of Kent and it's completely without a cause. They can no longer protect you. Have you thought about how you want to die?" Hearing this, Li Cheng blinked. The God of Fury was right. His actions might have started a planar war. The gods of the kind camp were already giving him face by not attacking him. But, what did it matter? It looked like the God of Fury had already decided. Li Cheng did not say anything to him. He simply said in his heart, "Three goddesses, it's your turn." As Li Cheng's words fell, three vast auras appeared at the same time. Ding, dong. You've accepted the God's Descent of the Goddess of the Moon Dance. Ding, dong. You've accepted the God's Descent of the Phantom Goddess. Ding, dong. You've accepted the God's Descent of the Goddess of Death. With the God's Descent of the three goddesses, Li Cheng's body suddenly gained some mysterious powers. However, Trelafani and Ella were too weak. Hence, the Goddess of Death's divine power occupied the majority of Li Cheng's body. Li Cheng's entire body became pitch black. The system notification was still ringing in his ears. It seemed that a certain equipment skill could be released. However, Li Cheng did not think too much about it. To deal with these bugs in front of him, he did not need to expend too much divine power. Thus, Li Cheng summoned the first form of the 9 Hammers of Doom. This form did not exceed 10 yards. Li Cheng stood still, and in the next moment, the 9 Hammers of Doom instantly turned into a pitch-black streamline. With incredible speed, the hammer instantly penetrated the bodies of all the mythical grade Zerg bosses. Instant death! Instant death! Instant death! Countless pitch-black words appeared above the heads of these bosses, which were closely followed by the sound of the system notifications ringing in Li Cheng's ears. Ding! Dong! Your attack has triggered the Goddess of Death's divine skill, Withering Strike. You've also triggered a 10,000 times increase and inflicted instant death on mythical grade boss, the 16-legged Zerg Centipede. Ding! Dong! You've successfully killed the mythical grade boss, the 16-legged Zerg Centipede, and obtained experience points. Ding! Dong! As the system's voice rang in Li Cheng's ears, the bodies of the dozens of mythical bosses in front of him instantly stiffened. Then, their huge bodies crashed to the ground. Boom! Boom! Seeing this scene, both the God of Fury and the first prince widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. Their faces were full of disbelief. How was this possible? This was a common question in their hearts. One had to know that the Zergs had a very special characteristic. If the Zerg nest was not destroyed, it would be very difficult for them to die. This was certain for all legendary grade and above Zerg bosses. As long as the Zerg nest was still there, they would continuously recover 1/3 of their HP every second. If anyone wanted to kill them, they would have to kill them with a single slap. Could it be did Li Cheng just kill more than 40 mythical grade Zerg bosses in 1 second? When they thought of this, they all felt that it was a little ridiculous. At this time, the 9 Hammers of Doom had already returned to Li Cheng's side. However, he was still emitting a terrifying pitch-black aura that was floating around him. Watching this scene, Li Cheng was also slightly surprised. It seemed that the Goddess of Death's divine power was quite strong. She was indeed worthy of being tens of thousands of years old, a young girl. At this moment, Li Cheng looked disdainfully at the God of Fury. He said disdainfully, "You're the God of Fury, right? Beat him up together." As soon as he finished speaking, all his troops' attacks instantly arrived. For a moment, the elven frost marksman's arrows whistled in the air as the shadow assassins suddenly appeared behind him. The lucky gamblers also threw over poker cards that were emitting magic light. As for the heavenly knights and the frost dragons, Li Cheng was afraid that their destructive power was too great, so he did not bring them into the palace. This palace of the Kingdom of Kent might be his backyard in the future, so he still had to keep some buildings intact. As for the young priests and sisters, they watched as the troops beat up the God of Fury. Such a scene was very exciting to them. With Li Cheng's current strength, he did not need to accept the power from God's descent to deal with the God of Fury. With his own troops, he could beat him up to the point of being unrecognizable, even by his own mother. Li Cheng also believed that with the God of Fury's strength, it would not be easy for him to smash the God of Fury with his hammer in one go. Therefore, he did not even bother using his own strength to deal with the bugs. This was a form of contempt. The reason he accepted the goddess's God's descent was also because of the bugs. After all, in his previous life, he had dealt with them before and knew clearly how difficult they were to deal with. He was currently in a hurry, so he knew it would be easier for him to kill them all in an instant. Chapter 214, Are the two of you acting? At this moment, the God of Fury widened his eyes. His health bar was dropping too fast. He began to doubt his life for a moment. This was God's descent. His defense had already far surpassed the attack power of a peak-level crown soldier. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. What is this? F***ck. You stupid prince, I'm not playing with you anymore. The God of Fury suddenly discovered something extremely terrifying. His true body that was far away in his divine kingdom had also received a certain amount of damage. This had scared him to death. Previously, when he had been killed by Li Cheng's hammer of chaos, he had received a lot of damage. However, he assumed it was because of the sudden death of a god nearby. Now, however, he could not understand what was going on with this human. How could he attack the incarnation of a god in the mortal plane and injure the god's true body that was far away in the divine kingdom? Was this not too ridiculous? He had never heard of an ability like this before, let alone be the one to suffer from it firsthand. Thus, the god of fury decided that he did not want to remain there any longer. He had already taken a blow from Li Cheng's hammer of chaos before. If his true body was injured again, his losses would be even greater. In just a second, the god of fury was no longer bothered with the life and death of the first prince. He immediately withdrew his divine power and consciousness of his god's descent. Then, with a plop, the first prince's body fell to the ground weakly. His health bar was almost bottomed out. Seeing this, Li Cheng merely raised his eyebrows. It was incredibly fortunate that he did not die after the god of fury forcefully withdrew his divine power. A few seconds later, the first prince climbed up from the ground with great difficulty. His originally gorgeous clothes had been completely soaked in blood. He no longer wore the same expression as before, and he panted as he spoke, "Netherworld, don't kill me. I'll make you the Grand Duke of the Kingdom of Kent. I'll give you half of my wealth." Hearing this, Li Cheng simply picked at his ear. The Grand Duke of the Kingdom of Kent? Do I need this first prince to bestow it on me? Thinking of this, Li Cheng only chuckled. Then, he snapped his fingers and the 9 hammers of doom once again turned into a pitch-black stream, instantly pummeling through the first prince's body. At the same time, the system's voice rang in Li Cheng's ears. Ding, dong. World announcement. Divine Dragon Alliance player, Netherworld, has successfully killed the acting king of the Kingdom of Kent, Prince Pine. You've obtained 5 million reputation points. Ding, dong. You've triggered a 10,000 times increase and obtained 50 billion reputation points. Ding, dong. You've killed the acting king of the Kingdom of Kent. Do you wish to usurp the throne? Hint. The Kingdom of Kent is a monarchy system. Usurping the throne will cause the entire kingdom to resist. Li Cheng thought for a moment and immediately said, "No usurping." Ding, dong. World announcement. Divine Dragon Alliance player, Netherworld, has successfully killed the acting king of the Kingdom of Kent, Prince Pine. The throne has been taken over by his successor, Princess Lena. As the system's voice fell, the first prince's body slowly dropped to the ground. Li Cheng looked at his corpse with disdain and shook his head. Did this guy not know what was going on? Did Li Cheng need the Grand Duke's title? Did he need his little bit of wealth? Li Cheng let out a long sigh of relief. The first prince was dead, and the god of fury had escaped. It could be said that the situation was set. The next thing he needed to do was to appease the surrounding cities. Then, he would also pursue and annihilate the entire underground city's Zerg army. As for the Kingdom of Kent's own matters, Li Cheng could not be bothered to care about them. However, as Li Cheng looked at the huge hole beneath the palace, he frowned. Did he not trigger a world event this time? Either way, it was a good thing. He could not be bothered to tangle with the Zergs at that moment. They were too annoying to deal with, so it was better to leave them to the Kingdom of Kent and the other players. At this time, Li Cheng unceremoniously walked forward and sat on the majestic throne. Feeling its cold touch, it represented supreme authority. Suddenly, Li Cheng said to the empty palace, "Come out." Then, a slender figure walked out from the side door. It was Princess Lena, the one who had just obtained the throne. In reality, she had been watching from the sidelines for a long time, but with Ella's divine power protecting her, the first prince and the god of fury did not notice her. With Ella's divine power, she definitely was not a match for the god of fury. Even so, the god of fury's attention had been on Li Cheng the whole time. Hence, she had not been discovered. Lena was wearing a gorgeous princess dress. Her royal bloodline gave her a special temperament. Unlike her two older brothers, she had a head of long dazzling silver hair. However, Lena's beautiful and noble face was full of frost at that moment. She indifferently glanced at the first prince's corpse and coldly asked, "Why didn't you usurp the throne?" "I have no need for it." Li Cheng shook his head. His main reason was that he did not like her and did not want to waste this time. If it were anyone else, they would have chosen to be the king without hesitation. However, Li Cheng was different. His vision was not that short-sighted. Ella's voice rang in Li Cheng's ear, "Hey, hey, hey, don't bully my saintess." Li Cheng was a little speechless and replied, "Why would I? Just don't forget our agreement." Hearing Li Cheng's words, Ella snorted lightly, "Humph, it's a soul contract, can I even violate it?" Li Cheng also shrugged his shoulders. Nevertheless, he had already predicted the outcomes and came up with the countermeasure of signing a soul contract with Ella. During this war, Ella's temple and Princess Lena had complied with the rules and did not interfere. Then, Princess Lena's voice suddenly rang, "Don't bully my goddess." This time, Li Cheng was really speechless. He felt that Ella and this Princess Lena were acting. Did they have to be so synchronized? Li Cheng hated that he did not have the Oscar trophies in his hands. Otherwise, he would definitely give one to each of them. They were simply too compatible. Princess Lena then came to Li Cheng's side. She looked at Li Cheng sitting on the throne with a complicated expression. Slowly, the corner of her exquisite mouth lifted into a cold arc as she sighed faintly and said, "The kingdom of Kent's completely finished. But Ella's saved." Li Cheng shrugged. The reason he came here was to save Ella. As for what the kingdom of Kent was like, it had nothing to do with him. However, thinking that the kingdom of Kent would be his backyard in the future, Li Cheng added, "Moreover, with me here, the kingdom of Kent will only be countless times stronger than before." Chapter 215, The First Duke of Kent. Princess Lena did not refute Li Cheng's confident words, almost as if she had tacitly agreed. However, her eyes were a little absent-minded as she looked at the smoke-filled Hindley city. A gentle breeze blew past, making Lena's silver hair flutter in the wind. The other half of her hair was tightly pressed against her fair cheeks. After this battle, the strength of the Kingdom of Kent had been reduced by at least half. However, it could also be considered as bidding farewell to the endless civil war. She believed that there would be no more internal strife in the Kingdom of Kent in the future. "Go and order the soldiers to surrender. Otherwise, I'm afraid my troops will completely kill all your troops in Hindley City," Li Cheng said indifferently as he followed Lena's line of sight. Princess Lena rolled her eyes at Li Cheng and did not say anything. She just nodded and left in a hurry. Princess Lena's right to speak would naturally be questioned by many. In the history of the Kingdom of Kent, there had never been a woman who ascended the throne before. However, with the two princes already dead, the generals could only express their loyalty to this last descendant of the royal family. The troops from the surrounding cities that hurried over received the order to return. As for those who refused to surrender, Princess Lena was not a weak woman. They were all classified as rebels and were immediately executed. An hour later, as the last soldier surrendered, the system's voice rang. Ding, dong. World announcement. The civil war in the Kingdom of Kent has ended. Princess Lena has become the new queen. The coronation ceremony will be held in 3 days. Ding, dong. World announcement. Princess Lena has established the national religion of the Kingdom of Kent in the Phantom Church. Those who believe in the church can enjoy the following privileges. First, you may accept specific church missions. Upon completing the mission, you'll receive contribution points from the Phantom Church. Contribution points can be exchanged for military services, equipment, and consumables. Second, you can unlock specific buildings. Third, in the Kingdom of Kent, you can purchase supplies and station your troops there. Ding, dong. World announcement. Player Netherworld has been designated as the first Duke of the Kingdom of Kent. Ding, dong. World announcement. The Guild, Extreme God, has been designated as the official cooperative guild of the Kingdom of Kent. All Extreme God members have the right to station troops and obtain supplies in the Kingdom of Kent. At the same time, they can receive the highest level military mission in the Kingdom of Kent. Ding, dong. When the system series of notifications fell, the players were all stunned. They had planned to join the battle between Li Cheng and the Kingdom of Kent. If they could obtain some benefits from it, it would be the best thing that could happen. Even if they could not get a share, it did not matter. It was good enough to be able to watch Li Cheng fall. After all, no one thought that he would survive. Their troops were still on the way, far from the border of the Kingdom of Kent. Yet, the war had already ended. For a while, all the players could not accept it. It was not because Li Cheng had fallen or not, but because their efforts were wasted. Not only did they not receive any benefits, but they also wasted a lot of resources sending their armies over. After all, their debts to the Church of Light were still there. No way. It's over already? I haven't even made it. F***ck, how strong is this Netherworld boss? He defeated an entire NPC kingdom. This is Netherworld boss playing with us. Brothers, have you heard of the Phantom Church? Is it reliable? It should be similar to the Church of Light. This is a good opportunity. The Church of Light couldn't even squeeze their way in. Now, we can receive quests from another church. Netherworld, Big Brother, how's the Phantom Church? What do you think about it? At that moment, the system's voice was still ringing in Li Cheng's ears. Ding, dong. You've been designated as the Holy Son of the Phantom Church. You're also the highest level priest. You'll receive the following privileges. First, you may issue the highest level SSS mission of the church, but you'll also have to issue the rewards for the SSS class missions and above. Second, you may recruit all the followers of the Phantom Church. Their loyalty and morale points will be permanently maxed out. Third, you may manage the transfer of all church personnel. Fourth, you may control all the merchandise in the Phantom Church shop. Ding, dong. You've been given the title of First Duke by Queen Lena of the Kingdom of Kent. This title is the highest title in the Kingdom of Kent. You'll enjoy the following privileges. First, you can control up to a quarter of the kingdom's territory. Second, you can control all the combat units in the kingdom. Third, you can participate in the formulation of the national policy. Fourth, you have the obligation to protect the royal family and can freely enter and exit the palace. As the system's voice fell, Li Cheng rubbed his ears. The system's voice had been ringing for a long time. On top of that, he had expected to receive these two new identities. The operation of the Phantom Church was naturally under Li Cheng's command. With Ella's intelligence, she would not be able to think of such a measure. If a church wanted to develop, the most important thing was the number of believers of the church. Li Cheng's method was very simple. The Kingdom of Kent would become the first human empire to be open to players. It would issue a series of church and empire missions. After these missions were completed, the rewards would be given by Li Cheng himself. This could be said to be extremely generous. However, in order to receive the mission, there were two conditions that had to be met, and that was to build the Phantom Church altar and the Moon Dance Goddess altar. Moreover, the mission also required the players' troops to pray in the two altars for a period of time. One had to know that the players' troops could also produce faith value. Although the faith value they produced was not much, there was a large number of players. This extremely large population was the current source of belief value for the various gods. The benefits brought by the first Duke title were also within Li Cheng's expectations. In fact, he could completely overthrow Lena and occupy the entire kingdom, but if he did that, it would definitely cause a huge backlash. At that point, the 9 temples could not sit idly by. Li Cheng also did not have the time to govern an extremely complicated super-large empire. His strategy was relatively clear, and that was to train migrant workers and spokespersons. Currently, the Queen of Kent, Lena, was a perfect migrant worker. In addition to her status as the Queen, she had an even more important status, and that was the Saintess of the Phantom Goddess. As long as Li Cheng and Ella maintained a good relationship, he did not have to worry about Lena betraying him. As for Ella, he knew this lady's personality quite well. It had never been easy for her to get so close to someone, hence, her relationship with Li Cheng could only be described as extraordinary. Chapter 216, The Moonlight Goddess's Warning. Ella was clearly in a very good mood. Not only was her crisis solved, but the scale of her believers had also increased by countless times. In the history of the Lost Continent, few had designated a certain god as the national religion. It could be said that it would not be long before Ella could take off. Her bell-like laughter rang in Li Cheng's heart. Ha ha ha, I really am undefeatable. Hearing this, the corners of Li Cheng's mouth twitched. This lady was good at everything except using her brain. When she went crazy, she was a complete joke. As for Princess Lena, or rather, Queen Lena, she was in a hurry to stabilize the situation. After Li Cheng's attack, Hindley City had suffered heavy losses. The loss of countless people and high-ranking military officers was not to be mentioned. The countless mythical-grade city walls in the south were blown into smithereens. After Li Cheng had used all kinds of skills, the destructive power of his troops could only be described as terrifying. Countless buildings in Hindley City had fallen into paralysis, including their countless military buildings. Of course, this had nothing to do with Li Cheng. He narrowed his eyes slightly and set his gaze on a few particularly eye-catching buildings, even for Hindley City. They were the guilds of some powerful gods. As a huge empire, the major churches naturally had their own branches here, and Li Cheng's destination was the Moonlight Church. The walls of the Moonlight Church were made of moon-white marble. During the fierce siege, they did not seem to be affected at all. They looked out of place in the midst of all the smoke and ruins. Li Cheng arrived at the door of the Moonlight Church, but he was stopped by 2 guards. "You are?" Li Cheng was not angry. "Netherworld," he said in a faint tone. When they heard his name, the eyes of the 2 guards immediately shrank. Though it was a made-up name, his reputation definitely preceded him. They hurriedly lowered their heads and said, "Duke Netherworld, please, come in. Miss Saintess has been waiting for a long time." "Saintess?" Li Cheng raised his eyebrows. He could not recall if he knew the Saintess of the Moonlight Church. However, he did not ask much. The 2 guards did not know much either. They simply nodded slightly and went in with Lena. His purpose this time was to come for the Moonlight Stone, so he did not let his troops in. The interior layout of the Moonlight Church was similar to that of the Church of Light, but there were many differences between them. The biggest difference was that there were small fountains with clear water flowing everywhere in the Moonlight Church. Seeing this, he naturally knew that this was not an ordinary building. Hence, he cast a detection spell on it. Moonlight Fountain. Description: the water flowing out from the fountain contains the Moonlight Goddess's divine power. 1 sip of it can recover a lot of HP. Level 1. Grade: Mythical. Effect: purify all debuffs below Immortal grade, recover 50% HP. 1 unit can only drink it once a day. Seeing this, Li Cheng's mouth twitched again. As expected of one of the 9 shrines, the Moonlight Church was quite wealthy. Its mythical grade facilities filled the entire corridor like decorations. Most importantly, this was just a branch of the Moonlight Church. Its headquarters was located elsewhere. Still, the effect of the spring water was pretty good. It could purify many debuffs like the poison caused by the zombies. Li Cheng did not think too much about it and continued walking forward. In the depths of the church, Li Cheng saw a slim figure wearing a moon-white robe in front of a statue of the Moonlight Goddess. His eyelids twitched. How was this the saintess of the Moonlight Church? It was clearly a clone of the Moonlight Goddess. Thinking of this, Li Cheng took a deep breath and asked, "Your Highness, you were looking for me?" As soon as his voice fell, the Moonlight Goddess slowly turned around. Her slender and graceful body was covered by a hazy pillar of light like the moonlight, making it impossible to see her appearance clearly. Her watery eyes looked at Li Cheng as she said, "What you did in Hindley City cannot be hidden from everyone's eyes." And Li Cheng asked expressionlessly. Naturally, he knew about this already, but he was not afraid. He had the confidence to negotiate with the gods now. Hearing Li Cheng's response, the Moonlight Goddess was silent for a moment. Then, her voice became cold. "Don't test the gods' bottom line. You're playing with fire. Trelafani and Ella can't protect you." The Moonlight Goddess's cold voice echoed in the temple, but Li Cheng scoffed it off. The bottom line of the gods? Do the 9 temples have a bottom line? Were all of them not harboring evil intentions? Other than a few kind-hearted gods who could not think straight, the other gods would never take action as long as it did not align with their interests. Li Cheng did not want to say anything more to the Moonlight Goddess, so he asked, "It's useless to say anything more. Just tell me what are the conditions for obtaining the Moonlight Stone." The Moonlight Goddess did not waste any time and said, "Help me destroy an altar of the Goddess of Darkness. Whether you succeed or not, I'll do my best to help this girl's path of advancement." As soon as she finished speaking, the system's voice rang in Li Cheng's ears. "Ding, dong! The Moonlight Goddess has issued you an SSS class quest. Destroy the altar. Do you accept it? Destroy the altar of the Goddess of Darkness?" Hearing the words of the Moonlight Goddess, Li Cheng was slightly stunned. He did not expect it to be such a request. Everyone knew that the Goddess of Darkness was already his mortal enemy. Was it considered a quest for him to destroy it? There had to be something fishy going on. Li Cheng would not agree to it so easily. Instead, he asked, "Which altar?" "The 5th level of the Underdark," said the Moonlight Goddess. Hearing the words of the Moonlight Goddess, Li Cheng sneered and replied, "Hee, you really have the nerve to say that." The Underdark was what people called the underground world. But in fact, under the Underdark, there was an extremely vast space. The people living there were all extremely terrifying existences. Even the residents of the subterranean world did not dare to approach it. If Li Cheng remembered correctly, this altar was probably the largest altar of the Goddess of Darkness. The difficulty of attacking it was not much lower than attacking the Church of Light. Hearing Li Cheng's cold laughter, the Moonlight Goddess frowned. She did not expect this human to have such little respect for her. However, she had a quest for him, so she explained, "You don't need to complete it immediately. You can do it when you feel like you're ready." If that's the case, that's fine. Li Cheng thought for a moment and accepted the mission. Chapter 217, Luna's Second Break, the Black Moon Eclipse. Li Cheng's idea was very simple. He did not agree on a specific time with the Moonlight Goddess anyway. If it was too dangerous, he could still go in another 1,000 or so years. Moreover, Li Cheng knew some secrets about the 5 levels below the Underdark. When the time came, he might be able to ruthlessly trap that old witch, the Goddess of Darkness. When he thought of this, Li Cheng nodded and said, "Accept." Ding, dong. You've accepted the SSS class mission, destroy the altar. Destroy the altar. Mission description: the Moonlight Goddess has entrusted you with a quest to destroy an altar of the Goddess of Darkness. This altar is located in the lower 5 levels of the Underdark. She has promised to help you complete Luna's path of growth. Mission nature: only hidden. Mission difficulty. Mission content: destroy the altar 0/1. Mission reward: Seeing that Li Cheng had accepted the mission, the Moonlight Goddess waved her hand and a stone that was emitting a sparkling moonlight slowly fell from the sky. The Moonlight Goddess's gaze fell on Luna and said, "This is the Moonlight Stone. Is this young lady called Luna? I'm very happy to share the light of the moon with you." "Thank you, Moonlight Goddess," Luna quickly said. She held the sparkling moonlight stone in her hand and the next moment, it emitted an extremely cold light and fused into her body in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the system's voice rang in Li Cheng's ears. "Ding, dong! Your hero, Moon Dance Saintess Luna, has successfully broken through the boundary and leveled up to level 80. Ding, dong! Your hero, Moon Dance Saint Luna, has successfully comprehended the new skill, Dark Moon Eclipse." A beam of gentle moonlight suddenly descended from the clear night sky. Following the system's voice, Luna had completed her second breakthrough. Now, Luna's temperament was still gentle, but upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a hint of danger. Seeing Luna's condition, the Moonlight Goddess was also very surprised. "It seems that you and the moon have a good rapport." Then, the Moonlight Goddess pondered for a moment and did not say anything more. She only reminded, "I hope that you'll use the power of the moon properly." When Luna heard this, she merely nodded and did not say anything. She could tell that this statement was also meant for Li Cheng. After all, Luna was Li Cheng's hero, and Li Cheng's actions represented Luna's future. After seeing Luna accept the Moonlight Stone's breakthrough, Li Cheng exchanged a few pleasantries with the Moonlight Goddess before leading Luna out of the Moonlight Church. Just as the two of them left, a graceful woman suddenly appeared. Her body was also emitting a faint moonlight. This person was none other than Trella Fanny. At this time, Trella Fanny said to the Moonlight Goddess, "Thank you, Your Highness." The relationship between Trella Fanny and the Moonlight Goddess was actually quite good, and Trella Fanny admired the Moonlight Goddess very much. She had once volunteered to serve her for a period of time, so she could be considered a fan of the Moonlight Goddess. Of course, Trella Fanny did not hide these things from Li Cheng. The Moonlight Goddess shook her head and said, "No need. I just wanted to see him." "You found a good spokesperson, Trella Fanny," the Moonlight Goddess said as she watched Li Cheng leave. "It's my honor," Trella Fanny said as she smiled. Li Cheng checked Luna's attributes. Her growth curve had improved a lot. At the same time, she also comprehended a new skill, Black Moon Eclipse. Li Cheng immediately used some hero skill points to increase its level to the maximum as he looked at the attributes. Black Moon Eclipse. Description: under the black moon, everything is silent. Uses the terrifying power of the moonlight to punish the enemy. Level: Max. Effect: summons black moonlight to attack the enemy. There are a total of 10 waves. Each wave deals 500 intelligence damage to the enemy within a 20,000 yard radius. Cost: 30,000 mana. Cooldown: 30 minutes. Proficiency: maxed. This skill was a super large-scale AoE skill. With Luna's current attributes, it could instantly kill a legendary soldier. However, Li Cheng blinked and looked at Luna's gentle and delicate face. Why did he feel that this girl was about to turn dark? In his memory, the moonlight was always gentle and warm. As for the black moon, he did not have any impression of it. As if sensing Li Cheng's doubt, Luna smiled and explained, "The black moon's the special form of the moon. Even if she's the moon, she won't always tolerate everything. She has her moments of anger." Hearing this, Li Cheng raised his eyebrows and asked, "Are you in a bad mood?" "Not really." Luna smiled and shook her head. After pausing for a moment, she said hesitantly, "I just discovered some things about the past." Li Cheng frowned slightly. He had shown less care for his other heroes. He sighed and asked, "Can you tell me about it when you have the time?" "Of course, Lord." Luna smiled sweetly. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly rang in Li Cheng's ears. "Ding, Dong. Respected First Duke of the Kingdom, Queen Lena's preparing to hold the highest military meeting of the Kingdom of Kent in the Royal Combat Conference Room. Please, attend the meeting. Ding, dong. The system's voice rang a few times before it stopped. Li Cheng glanced in the direction of the palace. It seemed that Lena had stabilized the situation. He thought about it and decided to support her. Just as Li Cheng was about to speak to Lena took the lead and said, "Lord, that's more important. Go and attend the meeting first. We can talk about my matters some other time." "All right. We'll talk about it soon," Li Cheng said gently as he patted Luna's head. Luna's face instantly turned red as her eyes shone with starlight. The Royal Combat Conference Room was located next to the palace. Naturally, Li Cheng had no obstructions along the way. Currently, the guards of the royal palace were all loyal believers of the Phantom Church. Naturally, they would not stop the holy son of their own church. In the conference room, the most eye-catching person was naturally Queen Lena, who was sitting at the head of the table. She had already changed into a more elegant and graceful regal gown. Coupled with the makeup that she had specially put on, there was a trace of dignity in her demeanor, although she was still young and tender. The huge round table in front of them had many empty seats. The owners of these seats had naturally been killed by Li Cheng. Other than some generals who had survived, there were also a few important NPCs who had rushed over from their own territories. There were 5 or 6 earls and more than 10 viscounts. When Li Cheng walked in, everyone's pupil shrank. Chapter 218, Lena, will you allow me to marry someone else? It was Li Cheng who had brought over 1 million troops and forcefully conquered their heavily guarded capital in less than an hour. Naturally, they felt a wave of fear. Their greatest enemy had suddenly become the first Duke of the Kingdom. As a result, everyone present was a little flustered. Li Cheng did not stand on ceremony and immediately sat down on Queen Lena's left. Queen Lena's eyes swept across the crowd and said, "All right, all the generals and nobles have arrived. What do you have to say?" In an instant, the entire meeting room became quiet. Everyone was looking at each other, not wanting to be the first to step out. A general who was guarding the city stood up and said, "Your Majesty, our losses during this battle are extremely heavy. The city walls in the south have almost been completely destroyed and can no longer be used. 90% of the defensive buildings have been destroyed, 60% of the production buildings have been destroyed, and the population has been reduced by half." Hearing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was only the result of an hour's battle. If they fought for another hour, the population of Hindley City would have been completely wiped out. Li Cheng scratched his face. He had already tried his best to control it. Otherwise, with the 3 trillion troops and Li Cheng's terrifying skills, they would probably be able to kill everyone within half an hour if they were really aiming to wipe out the population. A few generals immediately stood up and said anxiously, "Your Majesty, our defensive structures and city walls are all the legacies left behind by the late king. Currently, the warehouse only has 30 units left. And those defensive structures are all epic grade. What about our city defense? If the mage city attacks at this time, we won't be able to defend ourselves at all." Everyone's gaze turned to Queen Lena as they remained silent. This was also a test for the new queen. If she could not even resolve this small matter well, it was inevitable for them to harbor some disloyalty. Although Lena pretended to be serious and calm, she was only an 18-year-old girl. She looked calm on the surface, but Li Cheng could see that her small hands under the table were clenched into fists. It was obvious that she was at a loss. When he saw this, Li Cheng rolled his eyes. Why was Ella not here to save the situation? However, since he was here, he naturally would not allow Lena to be bullied by these nobles. Li Cheng immediately sneered. Was it not just mythical-grade city walls and some epic-grade defensive buildings? Judging from their tone, these things seemed to be very strong and precious. They even claimed that they were the inheritance left by the late king, making it seem like a family heirloom. Were they not ashamed of their weakness? Thinking of this, Li Cheng simply said, "Let me repair them. I'll change the city walls into immortal grade walls. The defensive equipment will be at least mythical grade. Let's start with 100,000 gates." Li Cheng's light words reached everyone's ears. They would be using materials from the Kingdom of Kent anyway, so he did not feel any heartache at all. Hearing Li Cheng's words, everyone present was stunned as they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Immortal grade city walls? Mythical grade defensive facilities? 100,000 of them? Was he pulling a joke with the people present? These things had completely impacted their understanding. They finally understood why Li Cheng was able to defend himself against the full-scale siege of the evil forces. Seeing Li Cheng speak up, Lena heaved a sigh of relief. She asked, "Does anyone have anything else to say?" At this moment, the nobles and generals were all silent. Li Cheng said, "Your Majesty, regarding the crusade against the Zergs, I'll report it to the 9 great shrines and launch the holy war. However, I'm afraid that the matter of the 2 princes colluding with the Zergs cannot be hidden anymore." Hearing Li Cheng's words, everyone's eyelids twitched. He was throwing the blame onto the 2 princes. As for Li Cheng, he could even begin to manipulate his impression, saying that he sent troops to expel the Zergs. Regarding Li Cheng's words, everyone present did not express any objection. To be able to sit here, they were all smart people. Who would dare offend an incomparably powerful Grand Duke for the sake of 2 dead people? They would just be asking for it. Do as the Grand Duke says. Lena looked at Li Cheng and paused for a moment before saying, "Also, the Grand Duke Netherworld can just call me by my name. There's no need to be so polite." As soon as these words were said, everyone felt a wave of shock in their hearts. They all wondered the same thing. What was the relationship between Netherworld and Queen Lena? After saying this, the rest of the meeting was rather boring. The issues discussed were basically post-disaster reconstruction and the resources needed. However, the Kingdom of Kent was one of the 7 great empires of mankind, after all. Hence, they still had reserves of resources. In addition to Li Cheng being present, the nobles also expressed that they could use some of their own resources. After that, there was not much else for Li Cheng to do. Finally, an earl suddenly said, "Your Majesty, our country must have a legitimate heir. You've reached the age of marriage, so your marriage can also be put on the agenda." Queen Lena's slender eyebrows jumped. She took a deep breath and looked at Li Cheng. Then, she said, "Don't worry about it. I have my own arrangements for my marriage." Hearing this, all the nobles' hearts were stirred up again. Even a fool could see what Lena meant. Hearing Lena's words, Li Cheng was a little dumbfounded. When was it decided? Why was he unaware of it? Because this was Lena's first official meeting, Li Cheng could not directly express what he had in mind, so he could only remain silent. The contents of the subsequent meetings were all miscellaneous, but the primary goal was to rebuild the empire, so the meeting ended very quickly. Seeing that the meeting had been dismissed, Lena secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she stood up and said, "Grand Duke Netherworld, let's go. Come back to the palace with me." At this time, Li Cheng asked the question in his mind. "When did we get engaged?" Seeing Li Cheng's reaction, Lena did not explain anything. Instead, she looked at him coldly and asked, "Grand Duke Netherworld, will you allow me to marry someone else?" Li Cheng was speechless. Chapter 219, We are from the same family. Hearing that sentence, Li Cheng was stumped. Queen Lena was a puppet that he had supported. Asking to marry someone else, even daring to marry someone else, meant that her wedding day would probably be the anniversary of her death. It was absolutely impossible for Li Cheng to see another man become the king of the Kingdom of Kent. Lena understood this in her heart, and Li Cheng did not say much either. It was simple to deal with smart people. There was no need for him to say anything. Queen Lena had already walked toward the palace. She held the hem of her dress and swayed as she walked. It was true that she was a little hobbled, and it was obvious that she had not adapted to wearing the queen's attire. Seeing her clumsy appearance, Li Cheng smiled. She looked more like a young girl. If she wore a cold expression, she would lose some of her femininity. Thinking of this, Li Cheng sent away a few maids who wanted to help and instead, extended his hand toward Lena. Seeing this, Lena did not hesitate to place her hand in his. A few minutes later, Li Cheng, holding Queen Lena by the hand, arrived at the front of the palace. The current palace made Lena a little absent-minded. What was once a magnificent palace was now filled with all sorts of bloody smells. Countless precious ornaments were lying on the ground. Seeing this scene, Li Cheng said to her, "Your Majesty, let me draft a few quests." "I said you can just call me by my name." There was no joy or sorrow on Lena's face. Seeing her expression, Li Cheng did not say much and got to work. The quest page was similar to that of the Church of Light, so it was easy for him to navigate without it feeling awkward. A few minutes later, the system's voice rang in the player's ears. "Ding, dong. Your mission details have been completed." Ding, dong. World announcement. Player Netherworld has issued the SSS class church missions: eliminate the cultists, the Empire's underground threat, the Empire's rebel lust. All players can go to the Kingdom of Kent to receive them. Li Cheng had drawn up a bunch of missions. The rewards of the missions were naturally awarded by him. Moreover, the rewards were very simple. They were all basic resources and some trash equipment that could not be used at all. Putting aside the content and rewards of these missions, the players would need to send a certain number of intermediate and above units to pray at the altars of the two goddesses for a period of time. After completing these requirements, players could accept quests and receive rewards. The reward pool, on the other hand, only comprised a few million basic resources. In exchange for these, Li Cheng had gained a lot of benefits. The belief value of the two goddesses would increase rapidly, and at the same time, the players assumed that they had earned a lot of money. The basic resources were only available for less than 10 days, and it was an extremely short period. As for praying at the altars for a period of time, they could squeeze out some time for it. Moreover, Li Cheng's mission targets were all his enemies. Cleaning up the cultists naturally referred to the believers of the few gods that were his mortal enemies, such as the goddess of poison, the goddess of darkness, and the god of fury. The Empire's missions were mostly to destroy the Zerg armies within the Empire. With these missions, it could be said to Li Cheng was doing one thing, but in fact, he was doing several things at the same time. He had only paid them with some basic resources that had long since overflowed in his storage. Some of these quests would require players to help the Kingdom of Kent nurture the troops which would serve them for a short period of time. However, they had to ensure that these troops' experience points were guaranteed. After some time, these troops would leave. For such a quest, the players were completely willing to complete it, and they were extremely happy with the rewards. Thinking of this, Li Cheng thought of his dedicated workers in Extreme God. He touched his chin and released another announcement in the guild. Guild announcement. I have one benefits for everyone. For those who complete the Church and Empire quests in the Kingdom of Kent will receive double the rewards. The moment this announcement was released, the entire guild was in an uproar. Ha ha ha, guild leaders awesome. As expected, joining Extreme God's the best decision I've ever made in my life. That's right. The last time I obtained the Bramble Centaur, I only needed to sell 2,000 of them and I managed to buy an apartment in my hometown. Netherworld, guild leader, I'll follow you for the rest of my life. Hehe, guild leader Netherworld, I want to give birth to your son. The guild leader won't take a fancy to a hooligan like you. If the guild leader wants a son, I'll be the one giving birth to him. I graduated from a top-tier famous school. Top-tier famous school? That's nothing. I know all kinds of positions. I'll definitely serve our guild leader well. The players of Extreme God quickly took a screenshot of Li Cheng's announcement and posted it on the forum. The title of the post was "These are the benefits of following Netherworld." In this post, it described in detail the items received by the members within the first few days of the guild's establishment. Among them were Tier 5 meat shield soldiers, gold-grade soldier equipment, countless practical consumables, and the recent perk of doubling of the rewards. The moment this post was posted, it instantly ignited a heated discussion in the forum, causing the other players to be filled with envy. Sob 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 sob, I beg you guys to stop posting. The most regretful thing in my entire life was when I hesitated for a second during Extreme God's recruitment. Netherworld boss is really too strong. Not only is he strong, but he can also make the people around him stronger. Such people are rare. Indeed, people like Netherworld and those so-called big guilds are completely different. One's in the sky and the other's in the ground. Are there any upper echelons in Extreme God? When will you start recruiting? I have a grade A talent and 10 years of online gaming experience. I want to improve. What's a grade A talent? I haven't said anything even though I have a grade S talent. Back then, I was busy and I missed the recruitment announcement. Otherwise, I would have joined, too. The members of the Rose Guild also saw the posts on the forum. These beautiful women no longer looked like ladies. They even started to drool. The doubling of rewards was not a small number, and it immediately caused a heated discussion in the Rose group chat. Big sister, don't we have any extra rewards? Yes, yes. We're from the same family. How can we treat each other differently? That's right. People from the same family are also people. Why don't you go and ask about it, big sister? Once these words were said, the entire group chat instantly fell silent. Everyone gave a thumbs up. These seemingly beautiful sisters were all shameless enough, but why did they like it so much? Chapter 220, Do Not Let My Goddess Down. However, everyone in Rose Guild knew that Li Cheng was in his own guild. How could he treat his players the same as those from Rose Guild? If they received the same treatment, it would be a miracle. Hearing the members' words, Purple Rose's face was full of hesitation. In the end, she chose to send Li Cheng a message. After receiving Purple Rose's message, Li Cheng was also stunned. How could he have forgotten about Rose Guild? Li Cheng's goal was very simple. He was looking for workers. He did not know where the players were from, and the rewards given to Extreme God's members motivated them to complete quests even more. Thinking of this, Li Cheng gave Rose Guild 1.5 times the quest rewards. Both sides were happy with this and everyone was satisfied. However, the other guilds were very uncomfortable. Currently, among all the guilds in the world, the guild tokens seemed to be incredibly rare. Only 2 guilds had been established thus far, Extreme God and Rose. Of course, this did not include Rose's subsidiary guilds. In Prideful Guild, Peerless Prideful's face was as black as steel. He looked at his subordinates angrily and said, "Damn it, you bunch of good-for-nothings, you can't even find a guild token." In the past few days, Prideful Guild had been going all out in attacking secret realms. They had killed at least a few thousand gold-grade bosses. However, not even a few pieces of gold-grade equipment had dropped, let alone guild tokens. Those subordinates were extremely depressed. They clearly defeated a gold-grade boss, but why did it only drop some black steel equipment? Although the War Soul Guild next door did not manage to find a guild token, they still managed to gain a lot of good equipment. Some of the equipment that would be very useful in the early stages of the game was already in the hands of almost all their core players. On the other hand, Prideful Guild had not been able to obtain any good items at all. Every day, they would have to fork out their own money to buy all sorts of consumables to go to the secret realm. There was no comparison at all. Thinking of all this, everyone had a consensus in their hearts. All of this seemed to have something to do with Peerless Prideful's misfortune. Of course, they did not dare to say these things out loud. However, more and more people silently withdrew from Peerless Prideful. After releasing a series of quests, Li Cheng closed the interface in satisfaction. He had already guessed that the entire Divine Dragon Alliance was in an uproar. The Kingdom of Kent would also become the player's favorite main city. Li Cheng left the palace with Queen Lena. The Kent Palace had suffered heavy losses, and there were still countless Zergs underground. Queen Lena did not plan to stay there for the time being. She would remain restless if those Zergs were not cleaned up. Thinking of this, she planned to first stay in the Phantom Altar. During that time, Ella would share with her some knowledge and skills of being a queen. After all, Ella herself was a princess, so she had a certain understanding of being a royal. Li Cheng had strong doubts about Lena's plans. Why did he feel that Ella was somewhat unreliable in this aspect? At this moment, he continued to lead Lena forward. Soon, they arrived in front of a temple that was enveloped by a faint shadow. It was Ella's church. The priests and believers inside were all extremely busy. With missions being given out and being defined as the national religion, the power of the Church of Phantoms rapidly expanded. They needed to properly divide their work. At the very least, the number of sub-shrines would soon be increased by several times. Li Cheng took out a teleportation door that emitted blue light from his backpack and placed it down on an empty space. Boom! The portal suddenly appeared in a corner of the church. Compared to the mysterious and magnificent church, the appearance of this portal was particularly abrupt. Seeing Li Cheng's casual actions, Lena sneered, "Do you also want to put a portal in my bedroom?" "It's not impossible," Li Cheng nodded and said indifferently. Lena continued to sneer at Li Cheng without saying anything. Li Cheng could not be bothered with this queen who liked to sneer. She was only an 18-year-old girl. Why was she sneering at him like this? He did not even do anything to her. Did he not just kill her two brothers and half of the population of Hindley City? Thinking of this, Li Cheng felt that he might have gone a little too far. However, he would never admit that. He merely shrugged and turned to leave. Grand Duke Netherworld. Seeing Li Cheng about to leave, Lena suddenly called out to him. Li Cheng turned around and looked at her dark eyes. He was a little confused. Lena was biting her lip tightly. As if she had made up her mind, she said, "I've been serving the goddess since I was 6 years old. It's been 12 years now. I've never seen her with such a happy expression. I've also never seen her trust a man this much before. So please, don't let my goddess down." Li Cheng was silent for a moment. Then, he replied, "Don't worry, I won't do anything to my own people." Li Cheng thought that if his little friend Ella could no longer take it anymore and wanted to do something to him, then no one would blame him for bringing her down with his own hands. Hearing Li Cheng's answer, Lena was dumbfounded and extremely dissatisfied. Did this man in front of her actually know what she was talking about? Was that what I was talking about? Forget it. Lena could not figure out what the man was thinking, so she decided not to think about it. Either way, she had already said what she wanted to say. Seeing the expression on Lena's face, Li Cheng did not care about what she could be thinking. So, he just left. "Oh, right." Li Cheng paused for a moment before continuing, "You still have a few good immortal weapons. I'll borrow them first." Hearing this, Lena thought he had understood what she meant, but she did not expect that he only wanted to borrow the divine artifacts. She gritted her teeth and said, "Go ahead." In the next moment, the system's notification rang in Li Cheng's ears. "Ding, dong. You've obtained the highest authority in the Kingdom of Kent's treasury. You may freely use all the items inside." After Li Cheng left, a vast and mysterious aura suddenly descended. Lena quickly turned around and looked at the pale green phantom not far away. She said in surprise, "Goddess! Lena, is this really okay?" Ella asked. Lena hesitated for a moment. After today's events, she had become Li Cheng's puppet. The entire kingdom of Kent was under Li Cheng's control, but soon, her eyes were filled with unprecedented determination. For the goddess, everything's worth it. Hearing this, Ella sighed softly. Her heart was moved. Lena was a child that she had watched grow up. In her, Ella could see her own shadow. She thought that if she had the courage and awareness that Lena had now, perhaps she would not have so many regrets.